Let me ask you something. Think about the nicest person you know. The one who always shows up, always helps out, never says no, never causes problems, never makes anyone uncomfortable. Now ask yourself honestly, are they the most respected person in the room? Or are they the most taken for granted? Because there's a difference, and most people never stop to think about it. We're raised to believe that if you're just good enough, patient enough, giving enough, the world will eventually recognize that and treat you accordingly. But here's what actually happens. You give someone an inch, they take a mile. Not always on purpose, not always out of malice, but it happens consistently, quietly, and by the time you notice it, the pattern is already set. So you're left wondering, what went wrong? I did everything right. I was kind, I was understanding, I never caused problems. And yet somehow, the people who cause the most problems seem to have no shortage of people respecting them, following them, taking them seriously. That doesn't seem fair, and it isn't. But Machiavelli didn't care about fair. He cared about what was true. And the truth, the part nobody wants to say out loud, is that the world doesn't run on good intentions. It runs on how you carry yourself, what you allow, what you don't. That's what this is about. Before we get into any of this, let's clear something up. When most people hear the name Machiavelli, they picture some kind of cold, manipulative schemer, someone who thought people should lie and deceive their way through life. That's not really accurate. Niccolò Machiavelli was a political thinker living in 15th century Florence, Italy. He worked in government. He watched rulers rise and fall. He paid close attention to why some leaders kept power and why others lost everything. And what he wrote, most famously in a book called The Prince, wasn't a guide to being evil. It was a guide to being realistic. He was essentially saying, stop pretending the world is something it isn't. Look at it clearly. Understand how people actually behave, and then make decisions based on that. That's it. He wasn't telling people to become villains. He was telling people to stop being naive. And when you apply that thinking to everyday life, to your relationships, your job, your social dynamics, it starts to make a lot of sense. Because most of the advice we get growing up is idealistic. It's based on how things should work. Machiavelli was interested in how things actually work. And once you understand that difference, a lot of things start to click. There's a version of being nice that's genuine, that comes from actually caring about people. That's real and it matters. And then there's a version of being nice that's really just fear wearing a friendly mask. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection, fear of being seen as difficult. And the second version, the one rooted in fear, doesn't actually earn you respect. It earns you the opposite. Here's why. When you're agreeable all the time, when you never push back, never say no, never draw a line, you're not really being kind. You're being predictable. And predictability in social dynamics has a cost. When people know they can push and you won't push back, they push more. Not because they're bad people, just because that's how behavior works. We all test limits, consciously or not. And when there are no limits to test, we keep going until we find one, or we lose respect for the person entirely. Think about it in your own experience. Have you ever had a friend who agreed with everything you said, who never challenged you, never said no to anything you asked, always just went along? At first, that feels comfortable. But over time, something shifts. You start to value their opinion less. You stop being careful with them. You make plans and cancel last minute because you know they'll understand. You take calls from them a little later because you know they'll still be there. You don't mean to treat them that way, but you do. And that's exactly what Machiavelli was talking about. He observed that people, across cultures, across centuries, tend to undervalue what comes with no resistance. It's not a character flaw. It's just human nature. And if you don't understand that about human nature, you'll keep doing the same things and wondering why nothing is changing.
Here's the core of Machiavelli's worldview, put simply. He believed that most people, most of the time, act in their own self-interest. Not selfishly in an obvious way, not in a mustache-twirling villain kind of way, just quietly, steadily, moving toward what benefits them and away from what costs them. And he thought that pretending otherwise, building your life around the assumption that people will always do the right thing, was a setup for disappointment. He wrote that a person who wants to be good all the time will come to ruin among those who are not good. That's not cynicism, that's a warning. It's saying, you can be a good person, you should be a good person, but you have to understand the environment you're operating in. Because if you assume that everyone around you shares your values, and they don't, you're going to get blindsided over and over again. And here's the part that stings a little. Machiavelli also observed that people are generally ungrateful. Not monsters, just forgetful, focused on what they need right now. You can do 10 things right for someone, and the one time you don't come through, that's what sticks. That's what they remember. So if your entire strategy is just to keep being nice and hope people will eventually reward that loyalty, you might be waiting a long time. Because loyalty without leverage isn't loyalty, it's just availability. Now let's get practical. One of the most important things you can take from Machiavelli's thinking is this. Without clear limits, people don't know how to treat you. That's not an insult, it's just reality. Most people don't sit down and consciously decide to take advantage of someone. It just kind of happens, gradually, through a series of small moments where the other person didn't say anything, so they kept going. A friend who's always late. You never said it bothered you, so they kept being late. A coworker who keeps dumping extra work on you. You kept accepting it, so they kept asking. A family member who makes comments that bother you. You kept laughing it off, so they kept making them. None of these people necessarily have bad intentions. They're just responding to the signals they've been given. And the signal you've been sending, intentionally or not, is that there's no line. Machiavelli talked a lot about the importance of structure, of people knowing what's acceptable and what isn't. And the reason he cared about that so much is that without it, everything becomes unstable. In personal relationships, that instability looks like this. You feel like you're always giving and never getting back what you deserve. And you're right. But the reason you're not getting it isn't always because people don't care about you. It's often because you never made it clear what you needed. A boundary isn't an ultimatum. It's not a threat. It's not aggression. It's information. It's you saying, this is where I am. This is what works for me, and this is what doesn't. And that information is something people need to treat you with respect. Without it, they're just guessing. And usually, they're going to guess in a way that's convenient for them. So setting a limit, calmly, clearly, without drama, is one of the simplest things you can do to change how people relate to you. You don't have to make a big speech. You don't have to explain your entire reasoning. Just say it, once, clearly, and then follow through. That follow-through is the part most people skip, and it's the most important part. Because if you set a boundary and then let it slide, you haven't set a boundary. You've just made a statement that didn't mean anything. And people will remember that, too.
Let's sit with this for a minute, because it's worth really thinking about. Most people want to be liked. That's completely normal. We're social. We care what people think. We don't want to be seen as difficult or cold or harsh. But being liked and being respected are not the same thing, and chasing one often costs you the other. Here's the difference. Being liked is about making people feel comfortable around you, and a lot of the time that means adjusting yourself, smoothing things over, agreeing when you don't fully agree, staying quiet when you want to speak, going along with things that don't really sit right with you. And in the short term, that works. People enjoy being around you. Things stay easy. But here's the long game, and Machiavelli was always thinking about the long game. When people see that your behavior shifts based on what they want, they lose confidence in you. Not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly, they stop taking your word at face value. They stop expecting you to hold a position. They stop seeing you as someone they need to take seriously, because you've shown them you can be moved. Respect works differently. Respect comes from watching someone behave the same way regardless of pressure, from seeing that when they say something, they mean it, from knowing that there's a version of them that will not bend just to keep the peace. That consistency, that solidity is what earns long-term trust. You don't have to be harsh to have it. You don't have to be cold or intimidating. You just have to mean what you say. When you tell someone something doesn't work for you, and then you actually hold to that, something shifts. They take you more seriously, not because you made them afraid of you, but because they realized you weren't just saying it to fill space. That's what Machiavelli meant when he talked about being solid. Not loud, not aggressive, just clear, consistent, someone whose word means something. And the interesting thing is, people actually like that. Even the people who initially push against your limits. Even the ones who seem annoyed at first. Because at the end of the day, everyone respects someone who knows who they are.
Here's a concept that Machiavelli spent a lot of time on, and it's one of the most useful things you can take from his work: the difference between controlled kindness and automatic kindness. Because kindness in itself isn't the problem. Machiavelli never said stop being kind. He said stop being kind without thinking about it. Automatic kindness is what most nice people operate on. Someone asks for a favor, you say yes before you've even thought about whether you have the time or energy. Someone needs help, you drop what you're doing because it would feel wrong not to. Someone's upset with you, you apologize immediately just to calm the situation down, even when you haven't done anything wrong. You're not doing any of this because you calculated it. You're doing it because it's a reflex. Because the alternative, saying no, holding firm, letting someone be uncomfortable, feels bad. And Machiavelli would say that reflex is costing you. Not because helping people is bad, but because when your helpfulness is automatic, it stops being a choice. And when it stops being a choice, it loses its value. Think about it this way. If someone gives you something every single time you see them, no matter what, you stop thinking of it as a gift. It just becomes part of the routine, expected, unremarkable. But if the same person gives you something occasionally, thoughtfully, at a moment that means something, that lands differently. That has weight. The same principle applies to your time, your energy, your support. When it's unlimited, it's taken for granted. When it's intentional, it's valued. Strategic kindness means you decide. You look at a situation and you ask yourself, do I actually want to help here? Is this something I'm doing because it matters or because I feel like I'm supposed to? And sometimes the answer is going to be no. Not no because you're selfish, not no because you don't care. No because you're paying attention to where you put yourself and you've decided that this particular thing isn't worth your time and energy right now. That's not cruelty, that's awareness. And when you start operating that way, when you're kind because you chose to be, not because you couldn't figure out how to say no, the quality of your relationships changes. People appreciate you differently because they understand that when you show up, you actually mean it. One of the things Machiavelli understood better than almost anyone else was this: reality matters, but perception often matters more. How people see you determines how they treat you, before you've said a word, before you've done anything, just from how you come across. And a lot of genuinely capable, intelligent, decent people are shooting themselves in the foot every day because of how they come across. They come across as too available, too eager to please, too quick to explain themselves, too willing to stay in situations where they're clearly not being treated well. And the message that sends, even if it's completely inaccurate, is that they don't value themselves very highly. And here's the uncomfortable truth about human psychology. We tend to assign value to people and things based on how they present themselves. If someone is always available, we stop seeing their time as valuable. If someone never holds firm on anything, we stop seeing their opinion as reliable. If someone tolerates being treated badly without saying anything, we unconsciously file that away as, okay, apparently that's acceptable with this person. None of this is fair, but it's real. Machiavelli would tell you that if you want to change how people treat you, start with changing how you present yourself. This doesn't mean putting on an act. It doesn't mean pretending to be someone you're not. It means being more deliberate. It means pausing before you respond instead of jumping to accommodate. It means taking up your full space in a conversation instead of minimizing yourself. It means letting silence work for you sometimes, because not every situation needs an immediate response. It means being willing to walk away from something, a conversation, an opportunity, a relationship, without falling apart, and letting people see that. Because when people see that you have options, that you're not desperate for their approval, that you can walk away, something shifts. You become more interesting, more worth paying attention to. Not because you changed who you are, but because you stopped broadcasting insecurity and started projecting stability instead. That's not manipulation. That's just understanding how people read each other. Now, let's talk about the most famous and most misunderstood idea from Machiavelli, the question of whether to be loved or feared. Most people hear that and immediately assume it's some dark, villainous concept, that Machiavelli was saying, go out there and make people afraid of you. That's not what he meant. What he was actually pointing at was a question of reliability. Love, or being liked, he said, is held together by a chain of obligation, which, because men are bad, is broken at every opportunity for their own benefit. In plain terms, people's affection for you is conditional. It depends on circumstances. It shifts when things get inconvenient. Fear, or more accurately, respect based on consequences, is more stable. It doesn't evaporate when someone's in a bad mood or when you stop being convenient. Now, translate that to real life. Being liked means people enjoy you when things are going well, when you're fun, when you're agreeable, when there's no friction. But the second things get complicated, the second there's a cost to sticking by you, that feeling of goodwill can disappear pretty fast. Respect based on accountability is different. It means people know that how they treat you has consequences. Not dramatic consequences, not threats, just they've learned through experience that you have limits, that those limits are real, and that crossing them leads to something. Maybe distance, maybe a direct conversation, maybe you simply stop engaging. Whenever it is, there's a response. And knowing that you're not someone who just absorbs whatever comes your way, keeps people more careful, more considerate, more respectful in how they approach you. And here's the key thing Machiavelli adds: this only works if you're also fair. Because if you're consistent, calm, and fair, and you still hold your limits, people aren't afraid of you. They just respect you. They know where they stand, and most people actually appreciate that. It removes uncertainty. It tells them exactly how to be with you. That's the combination Machiavelli was pointing toward. Not harsh, not cold, not intimidating. Fair, consistent, and not easy to push around.
Everything we've talked about so far comes down to one thing: a shift in how you see yourself and how you operate. Not a personality change, not becoming someone you're not, just a recalibration. Because most of the behavior we've been talking about, the over-explaining, the automatic agreeing, the absorbing of bad treatment without saying anything, most of that isn't really coming from generosity. It's coming from discomfort. Discomfort with conflict, with being seen as difficult, with the idea that someone might not like you if you say no. And Machiavelli would say, as long as that discomfort is running the show, you're not actually in control of how people treat you. Your anxiety is. So the shift is this: you start making decisions from a calmer place. Instead of immediately accommodating, you pause. You give yourself a second to actually think about what you want to do, not what will make the other person most comfortable in the next 30 seconds. Instead of over-explaining your choices, you just make them. You don't need everyone to understand and agree with your reasoning. You're allowed to just do things. Instead of staying in situations that aren't working because you don't want to deal with the discomfort of leaving, you recognize that discomfort is temporary, and what's waiting on the other side, being somewhere you actually want to be, is worth it. Instead of reacting to every small thing, you start choosing your battles. You save your energy for what actually matters. And people notice that. They notice that when you do say something, it means something, because you don't say it about everything. And slowly, not overnight, but over time, the dynamic around you changes. People start listening more carefully. They're more thoughtful about how they bring things to you. They take you more seriously. Not because you became someone else, but because you stopped letting old habits, old fearful habits, make decisions for you. Let's make this concrete, because none of this is useful if it stays abstract. Say someone at work consistently interrupts you in meetings, talks over you, takes credit for ideas, doesn't acknowledge you when you've contributed something. The automatic nice guy response is to stay quiet, maybe mention it to someone else, maybe just work harder and hope people notice eventually. The Machiavellian response, the practical one, is to handle it directly and calmly the next time it happens. Not with a big confrontation, not with an angry speech, just something simple in the moment. Actually, I wasn't done yet. Or following up after the meeting with, hey, I noticed that idea got attributed to you. That was something I'd brought up earlier. I want to make sure that's clear for future reference. No drama, no emotion, just clear. Or take a personal example. You have a friend who cancels plans on you consistently, last minute every time, and you always say, no worries, it's fine. After a while, that stops being generous. It becomes permission. The shift is saying once, not in a big dramatic way, hey, I've noticed this keeps happening. When you cancel last minute, it's genuinely hard for me to rearrange things. I need a bit more notice. That's it. You said it. You were clear, and now they know. If they adjust, great.
If they don't, now you have information about how much they actually value your time, and you can make decisions accordingly. That's the whole game. You're not trying to control people. You're not trying to force outcomes. You're just being clear about where you are, and then letting people show you who they are in response. So let's bring it back to where we started. The nicest person in the room, the one who's always there, always gives, never causes problems. Are they respected, or are they just easy? There's nothing wrong with being kind. There's nothing wrong with being generous or patient or understanding. But if that kindness has no structure around it, if there are no limits, no consistency, no sense that you actually have a line somewhere, then you're not being kind, you're just being available, and the world will treat you accordingly. Machiavelli's whole point was simple when you strip it down. Define how you operate, be clear about what you'll accept and what you won't, show up consistently. Don't let the discomfort of conflict talk you into tolerating things that don't serve you. Because if you don't define those things, someone else will define them for you, and they're going to define them in a way that works for them, not out of cruelty, just out of convenience. So the goal isn't to become hard or cold or calculating. The goal is to combine the genuine goodness you already have with the kind of clarity and consistency that make people take you seriously. To be the person who is kind but not easy, fair but not a pushover, present but not desperate for approval. Because when you can do that, when you can be both good and solid at the same time, you don't have to choose between being a decent person and being someone the world respects. You get to be both, and that's the whole point.
If any of this hit different, if something in here made you stop and think, or made you realize something you'd been noticing for a while but couldn't quite put into words, that's what this channel is about. Not motivation, not hype, not someone yelling at you to be your best self. Just real ideas, explained clearly. The kind of thinking that actually changes how you see things. We go through concepts like this regularly. Practical philosophy, human behavior, how people actually operate in the real world, and we break it down in a way that's straightforward and useful. No fluff, no filler, just content that's worth your time. So if that's something you're into, the subscribe button is right there. It's free, it takes 2 seconds, and it means the next time we put something out, it actually shows up for you instead of getting lost. That's really all there is to it. We'll see you in the next one.